What's it really like working as a cop in America's big cities? Well, I figured let's go big or go home. So I reached out to some people who worked at LAPD, NYPD, and Chicago PD, some of the biggest, to give you information about what it's really like, the pros, the cons, the challenges, the right mindset you need to have, these type of things that will help you out whether you're thinking about working for a big agency or just want to understand what the realities are working in a big city. Let's get into it.
Hey, my name's Chuck. I'm one of the hosts of War Stories podcast. I worked at Los Angeles Police Department for a little bit, and some of the pros and some of the cons are it's a big agency. You get a lot of experience really fast, a lot of patrol experience really fast. You get a chance to work with a lot of different specialized units all the time. You get a chance to work with gang units, vice units, narco units. You get a chance to do all that stuff. You even get a chance to even be on some awesome raids with federal agencies or controlling perimeters, and then you get to pick their brains. So you get a lot of experience really quick. You get to meet a lot of people. You get to network. And then if you don't like an area, you get to move around. There's 21 geographical divisions. There's 4 traffic divisions and a slew of other things. So just the ability to move around as you wish and as you want to, or the ability to go and do a loan up in detectives, because each division is going to have their own set of detectives. It's not just one area for the whole city. It's every division has its own detectives. Now you do lose some things working at a big agency, experience wise. Maybe sometimes you're not going to get a chance to run that investigation from the beginning to the end to the city attorney's office and file it like a detective would. You're going to pass it off at some point. So that could be a con, but you do have the ability to go on loan to detectives and do all of that. And good thing about my agency, when I was working at LAPD, they made it a policy that you shall do follow-ups. And it kind of sucked at the beginning, but you really learned a lot. You did a lot of follow-ups to help out the detectives because the amount of calls that you were getting, there were so many. And so that in turn would be handed off to detectives. You have all these reports that you're filing, getting arrests and things like that. And now it's falling in the detective's lap and they're getting inundated with reports because it's busy. You got a chance to do a lot more follow-ups, a lot more detective and investigative work, which is great because it builds your resume and repertoire as an investigator, which is awesome. But I would just say the biggest thing working at a large agency is the ability to move around as you see fit. And if you don't get along with a supervisor, you can move around, which, that's a big upside. If you don't like a certain part of your command, you can move. If that command doesn't like you, they can move you. I guess I'll leave everybody with this. The ability to move around and knowledge and experience. Some agencies, they'll handle maybe 1 call a day, 2 calls a day in a real slow area, maybe a real rural town, maybe adjacent to a bigger city. Maybe they're going to work, maybe 10 calls, 15 calls a day. Not saying that big agencies is the only way to go, just what I'm used to. A lot of agencies are getting understaffed, so that just means more of the workload's getting onto the officers. So keep that in mind as well. Bigger agencies, you're not going to feel it as much as someone calls out sick. If you get someone calls out sick in a smaller agency, you might get called on a day off and be like, hey, you need to cover so-and-so just called in sick, and then you got to go. So keep that in mind too. Make up your minds, do what's best for you, do what's best for your career. And if you want to check us out, go to www.warstoriesofficial.com and check us out there. We're on all major streaming platforms for podcasts, wherever you listen. We're on YouTube, and it's War Stories Official Podcast or War Stories Podcast. And if you're on Instagram, it's War Stories Official. So check us out, follow us, watch us, stay safe out there.
For all my fellow Leos thinking about working in a big city, here are but a few things to consider. Let's talk pros and cons. There are both positive and negatives to any decision. However, when it concerns working in a big city or a large or small department, keep in mind that you are in control of what you take out of the experience. Regardless of where you are, you dictate your success, not the agency in which you work. You can be a proactive officer wherever you are. Opportunity. In a big city like New York City, for example, in a department like the NYPD, where I spent my career, there may be more opportunities for things like advancement, promotions, assignment opportunities. Greater opportunities, however, bring more competition due to the volume of personnel. A smaller department may have less opportunity, but keep in mind the same level of competition. Let's talk exposure. New York City is a tourist destination and contains communities which have greater diversity than you might find in a small town. This adds a level of complexity to the cases being investigated at times because those involved, your perp, your witnesses, they may have been only visiting when the incident occurred, or they may be a language barrier. Community diversity in a big city helps you grow as an investigator, but most importantly as a person. Above all, remember, being an officer means being in service to others. If that is coming at a detriment to yourself and the ones you love, lean on others for help. Always remember that many have walked a similar path as you, and they're just waiting to assist you on your journey.
Hi, my name is Liz Pohl, and I'm a Chicago police officer. I have been on the job for 21 years, and I was born and raised in Chicago. I have definitely had quite an experience in those 21 years on the job. I have definitely experienced some very traumatic situations, high critical stress incidents. The amount of trauma that we can go through in a day for some individuals, they will never experience in a lifetime. That has been probably one of the most challenging times, is experiencing a lot of the death with homicides, shootings, domestic violence cases, a lot of abuse, whether it's physical or sexual abuse cases. I think the way that I have been able to cope and get through those situations is through the support of my family and my friends and my coworkers. I think one of the things that we have a hard time with is really talking about a lot of what we experience, and a lot of that comes from wanting to shield our friends and family who are not the police from being exposed to a lot of those stories and a lot of the horrific things that we see on the job. We tend to have a habit as first responders to really try to compartmentalize and just kind of shove a lot of the trauma away somewhere and not deal with it. And what I've learned on this job is that the more that we do that, the faster it's going to come out at some point in the future, and it's going to come out in a very unhealthy way. And then we're trying to find, especially a lot of the unhealthy ways to cope with drinking or trying to be involved in other situations that aren't the greatest for us, and it causes things to spiral into a worse direction. I think some of the other challenging things on this job has been watching some of my fellow members of the job take their lives through suicide. And a lot of that also stems from the fact that people let things get so difficult, and because they avoid so much, or they don't want to talk about and deal with the hardships of this job, and then in combination of their personal lives, people have a hard time dealing with that, and they don't turn to anyone for help, because we're supposed to have it together and we're supposed to know what to do at all times. And the reality is that we're human beings and we don't always have the answers. So instead of struggling on our own and having such a hard time, I believe that it's necessary to turn to someone else, to a professional, a coworker, a family member, a friend that's not even on the job, and be able to talk to those individuals to get some kind of guidance and help, or just be able to vent to those individuals and get through the things that we're having a hard time with.
What's going on, everyone? Marley March, host of the I Got a Police podcast. What do I like or dislike about working in a big agency, in a large agency? Well, let's go with the likes first. With the Los Angeles Police Department, I think at one point we had over like 250 assignments. So imagine how many different jobs that you can do. I mean, one day you can decide to be a pilot, right? Or a tactical flight officer. If you wanted to go be a SWATologist, you can do that too. If you just wanted to be a detective, you can just be a detective and then work all these different multi-jurisdictional task forces. From that particular lens, the dislikes, working in a small agency, you just don't have that many opportunities to work different assignments, right? And if you do, from what I've been seeing and what I've been told, is that those assignments, have a term limit, and then you got to go back out to patrol. So that's definitely where I can share my experience working in a large agency, and I can tell you that it has afforded me a lot of success. Now, let's take it from the internal affairs scope, and this is super important, because if you get an IA in a large agency, like LAPD, there's over 22 different divisions, precincts, if you will. And so if you get an IA in one side of the city, guess what? In the entire other side of the city, they're not even going to know about your IA. However, in a small department, when you get an IA, guess what? Everybody knows. And that can be definitely not advantageous, and it can definitely have an impact on the outcome, because You can be influenced by bias. You can be influenced by the fact that maybe there is some favoritism, et cetera, et cetera. We can talk a lot about that when you see the podcast. But I can tell you that in a large agency, when it comes to an IA, right, you can get in trouble, but guess what? Not everybody's going to know about it. So that's the likes and dislikes. And certainly I wouldn't know because I've never worked for a small agency. So I hope that kind of helps. And if you're going to choose one or the other, you know what? If you wanted to become a police officer, it doesn't really matter if it's large or small. Just as long as you want to make a difference, serve your community, and do right by everyone, by all stakeholders, right? Always do right. And you can look me up at YouTube, the IA Guy channel. And of course, you can always find me on Instagram, the IA Guy Podcast. And we hope to see you soon, okay? Like always, please be safe out there. And don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.